I welcome you to Inovare. Yeah, this is where we innovate. This is the podcast where changes are made. If you're not growing, then you're dying. Innovation is the key to surviving. This is Inovare, where we ain't scared to make that change and create a new way. If you're ready to learn and sit back and just chill, it's about to get real. This is Inovare.
What's up, everybody? Welcome on into another episode of the Inovare podcast. I'm your host, Roy Edwards, and thanks for joining us. Today, I got somebody who I've admired from afar, and honestly has played a large role without him. He doesn't even know this, but he's played a large role in a lot of the things that we're doing here at Inovare. His name is Tony Watley. He's a business mentor, best-selling author, podcast host, and entrepreneur. He's led a dual career for the last 20 years in two distinct industries, those being oil and gas and the automotive performance industry. This was accomplished by starting businesses during his spare time. He's the author of The Side Hustle Millionaire and a founder of 365 Driven. Tony helps everyday people and entrepreneurs find their true potential. Welcome into Inovare podcast, Tony Watley. What's up, man? How are you?
Man, Roy, thanks for having me on, dude. I can't wait to share some value with your audience. And I love the name of your show, by the way. It's very creative, Inovare.
Yeah, thanks. I would love to take full credit for that. I had a little bit to do with it, but my marketing people are really good. And let's just say that they kind of kicked me, and they were like, "Dude, what are you doing with my old name was terrible." So it always pays to have a good marketing guy out there. So, but dude, I love what you're doing. Like I said in the intro there, like I've been an admirer of yours from afar. We were a member of similar groups, and I've modeled a lot of the stuff that I'm doing after some of the stuff you're doing, like just the way that you've been able to catch people with like your backdrop right now, the way that's purple and you showed me that it turns to blue and like all this cool stuff, like this visual effects of this world that like I'm still new to the podcasting world, but I think it's so cool how you've been able to grow a brand and do what you've been able to do through social media outlets. And like you're an engineer, right? Am I correct? Like that's your background, right?
Yeah, I'm a degreed mechanical engineer, but the odd thing about that is I actually struggled through engineering school, and I did that as a pursuit to get to the six-figure salary range. And I've always been artistic and creative and like to build things with my hands and paint and draw and things like that. So I would say I'm very visual-minded and very creative, although I do have the analytical background.
Yeah, very similar background to I'm a software engineer, but I grew up, I don't know, drawing, painting, thinking that I went originally to art school,
there you go.
And it wasn't good. Art 101.
The whole starving artist thing wasn't appealing to you?
It was not, yeah.
I didn't want to be starving. It's like, why do I have to be starving? Can't I just be an artist and get paid? No, not really. So.
Right. You know, they make it seem really cool when you're like building sculptures and stuff, but I guess that's only 1%, right? So let's dive into your backstory now. I know that every podcast starts out this way, but I do think it's important for people to learn kind of like who is Tony Watley and why we should listen to his great advice, other than the fact that he's doing some really cool stuff. Like I always think the origin story, right? I love the origin story. So tell me, who is Tony Watley?
Well, I'll say that I grew up in the Texas area, Houston area, right, specifically, and two hardworking parents, blue-collar parents. My dad served in the Vietnam War at the U.S. Marines, and I was actually born on a Marine base in Japan. And, we came to the United States when I was about 1 year old, and my mom's a Japanese immigrant, and so she worked her entire career as a cafeteria worker in the public school systems, and my dad worked in the oil and gas refineries here in the Houston area. So I got to see the values of hard work and the struggle and growing up lower middle class and really the worst neighborhood of our city that we grew up in. And I got to understand that nothing was going to be handed to me. And if I wanted to figure out anything in life, whether that's money or success or anything that I needed to do, I'd had to figure out that for myself. And my parents were always enabling me to do that. They never held me back. I would give them a lot of credit for having me mentally strong and letting me know that I could do whatever I wanted to do. But I also just had to go do it. So I didn't have the allowance. I was a kid that was knocking doors, 10 years old, mowing yards, washing cars, walking dogs, whatever I could, because if I wanted that newer video game or the skateboard or the BMX bike, I had to go figure out how to do that myself. And that's what I did. And I never complained about it. And it's funny because I've got friends that I've known since kindergarten still good friends, and they've known me my entire life. And they said I've always been the same, where I just did the work and I didn't complain about it. And I've never complained about having to do the work. So, my character has kind of transitioned and gone through that through my whole adult life. And, that's what led me to going to college. Before we fired up the microphones, I told you about, the engineering degree and going to school. And well, that was because when you grow up middle class, they always tell you that the goal is to go make a 6-figure income. And that's been the goals, unfortunately, since like the 1960s. Yeah. And it's still a goal, because I understand that the average household income is around $68,000 combined. And so a lot of people, their goals never hit that 6-figure income. So I'm thinking, that's the dream I have. I need to go figure out how to do that. The best way I could do that is go be a doctor, or a lawyer, or engineer. Have no interest in the medical profession personally, and didn't want to go be a lawyer. So I said, okay, I guess I'll go do an engineer thing. What do I want to do? It's like, well, I'm a car guy. I love cars. I love building cars, racing cars, and mechanical engineering kind of aligned with that. So that's what I did, is I forced myself to go to engineering school while working full-time construction in the Houston area in oil and gas refineries, and waiting tables on the weekends and going to school at night. And it took me 7 years to finally get out of school. And when I got out of school and worked in my big boy salary engineering job, entry level back then, it was probably about $45,000 a year. I was getting home at 4:30 in the afternoon. I felt like I was working a part-time job. Yeah. So for all these people that complain about working 40 hours a week, thinking that's a lot of hours, after working full-time and going to school at night, working 2 jobs, it felt like a part-time job when I was getting home so early. So what did I do? I actually went back to the restaurant that I was managing before I graduated and picked up shifts as a waiter and a bartender while I had an engineering job. And then that led me to starting to build websites and building different things and online businesses. And my first actual business was in 2001. So I just really try to be more productive with my time than sit around and watch TV. We didn't have Netflix back then, but we had Blockbuster and videos and a lot of video games to distract you. But I just decided that I want to go make something more with my life rather than settle for what most people would settle for.
Yeah. I have a very similar story with mine, where my dad straight up told me when I went off to college, he said, your job in college is to get a degree. You're there for school, which was spot on. And I'll probably tell my kids the same thing, but school in college is different than school in high school. Like in high school, you go and you're there and you have your 8-hour day or whatever. College, some days I might not have class.
Right.
And I'm like, I got to this point where it's like, I got to get a job. And then same to you. Like I DJ'd in college. And so I would go to class, and then I would have night classes, and then I would go to work, and I would work from 8 o'clock until 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. And then, so literally 20-hour days is what I was used to. And I got out of college and I got my job, and it was like, what do you mean I am just here for 8 hours? What am I supposed to do?
This is part-time stuff.
Right. And I picked up side work, and I did these side projects, and, that's where web design and all this other stuff. I started DJing more, and I served waited tables, and I had multiple jobs. And we talked about that beforehand, where I was in the radio industry, and you don't get really paid in the industry. You have to work multiple things. And so that gets into side hustles, right? And so you wrote a whole book on this, literally. So what is a side hustle millionaire? And did it come from your belief of just filling hours out because you felt like you were not working a full-time job?
I think it's important to understand that I never believed that I would become a multimillionaire. I just never believed that, because literally my dad was the first person in our family to have a house that didn't have wheels attached to it. So when you understand that, and my mom, Japanese heritage, they grew up working on farms. So I saw wealthy people in our town, but I didn't think that was going to be me. And I always thought these things like it takes money to make money. And it also thought that to be a business owner, you had to already be wealthy, because that required you to go build a storage or a storefront on a main street and hire people and all these things. So they kind of limit your belief in the public school system that it's not possible, at least in my generation. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it was like, I just got to figure out how to do something. So I didn't have these big thoughts. I didn't go into starting a business thinking about making millions of dollars, but that's important, because a lot of people, I understand that perspective. They don't have those thoughts, and that's okay. That's normal. Okay. But the thing is, when I started my first online business, which was in the car space, I just wanted to build a community for people to hang out and talk about the cars that we enjoyed, which back then were the Corvettes, the Camaros, and the Firebirds that we were driving around, me and my friends. So, man, if I build this online community, we can all go online and talk about these things and teach each other how to make them faster and drive better and make them look cooler and things like that. And to give you a perspective of how small I was thinking, because I had that engineering career, right? Mm-hmm. I just wanted to make $500 a month. And most people hear that and like, what? And I was like, where does that come from? Well, that was the car note of the Trans Am that I'd bought when I graduated college. It was about $500 a month. And I said, if I could get a free, air quotes, car out of this cool website and we could talk about cars and hang out, like that's a win-win. And I had one business partner up in Chicago and he thought the same thing. And he had a brand new Camaro SS, $500 a month. It's like, dude, that would be cool. It'd be like having a free car. So that's why we started the thing. Okay. We weren't thinking about LLC and branding and all this stuff and growing it, scaling it. We didn't have any clue about that stuff. I was still in my 20s at the time and didn't have mentors that did this kind of stuff. And I just kind of learned by reading books. And it started growing and we started doing things the right way. And it grew and grew and grew. And it grew to over 300,000 registered members. And we sold that in 2007 for a couple $1 million cash. And the thing is that whole thing grew and scaled because we were doing so many of the right things, just doing the right things, not the easy things. And within the first 10 months, it was already making about $10,000 profit per month. Wow. So the $500 initial idea became a $10,000 per month return. And we're like, oh crap. And it was only till that point we started thinking, wow, we may need to go create one of those LLC or corp things. Like we got to figure this out. So we didn't have all the answers when we got started. Okay. And that's what I want to give people the idea is like, you don't have to have all the answers to get started. And that's what holds most people back is they just study and study and study and read and read and read. And they listen to 1,000 podcasts and they read books like My Side Hustle Millionaire. And they just fortify themselves with information, but they never actually take that first step to get started. And that's the biggest mistake you'll find is you have to start and then you're going to figure it out. Every entrepreneur that's good figures it out as they go. Don't think you have all the answers before you start.
Yeah, which is a tough lesson, right? Because preparation is king. You hear that a lot, right? Oh, preparation is king, but you can over-prepare.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right? Where you just, and then you start talking yourself out of it and you're like, oh man, well, I'm not good enough to do this. I'm not whatever. I'm not smart enough. I'm not this. I don't have enough much money. But the truth is that, and I liken it to parenthood. I don't know if you have any, do you have children?
Yeah, I've got one son. He's almost 21.
Yeah, so he's just a little kid, right? So, right. So, like when in parenting, people always try to, oh, well, I'm not ready to have kids. I'm not ready to do this. I'm not ready to, and maybe you're not, right? But nobody's really ready to be a parent. No. You figure it out as you go. The number one piece of advice I always tell parents and new parents, because they always ask me, I have 4 kids, and so of my friends, I started really early. I had my first kid, I was 24, and so. A lot of people always come and ask me, Roy, like, what do I, first kid, what do I do? You have any advice? I'm like, dude, my number one piece of advice is don't listen to anybody's advice. Because everyone's only going to speak on their own, their own perspective, their own kid, which you're going to figure it out. It's in your nature to figure it out. That's the fight or flight type of mentality. And if you care enough, raising a child, you're going to care. And so you're going to put your time into it. Then you'll figure it out. Same thing with a business. You'll figure it out, man. Like if somebody else is going to give you advice and they're going to say, oh, you're going to fall for 10 years. Well, that was their experience. That doesn't mean that you're destined for that. So I bring that back to say, to right on, man, where you're saying the pieces of advice and the you have to go do it. That's the number one thing in my mind is just to get off your butt. Mm-hmm. Right. And so you talk about constructive consistency and how it always wins. And so I saw that in your core values and thought I need to ask them to break this down because I want to know what constructive consistency is and how because you obviously care about it a lot to put it in your core values. So what is constructive consistency?
I would say that consistency is my favorite word, and that's the result of everything that I've ever achieved. Looking back, it's always based on consistency and being patient for the results, being very driven, but being patient. Okay. And the things that I see most people do, even in the space we're in right now, podcasting, speaking, building a personal brand, launching a company or fitness, all these things require consistency over time to get results. Most people want to skip the time part and they go really hard. I mean, how many times we see podcast guys, you and I probably know a lot of people in common, who go, man, Roy, Tony, I want to launch a podcast because you guys are killing it and I want to see this stuff. And they get all hyped up and they go buy the microphone and they set the backdrop and they go hire the logo designer and they get it listed on Spotify and iTunes. And then they go to like 4 episodes and they quit.
Right.
And I'm like, well, why did you quit, man? Like you were doing so well. Like, no one's listening. No one's literally listening. I wasn't getting enough downloads per month. So it was a waste of my time.
I wasn't ranked.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I didn't get top 100 on the first week. And I'm thinking, dude, that's the number one problem with people who do start something. So I'll give a golf clap to people who actually did start something. But the thing that you have to understand is that most people quit too early. And whenever you're starting anything new, it seems like about a 2 to 3 month is where I've seen most people in my life start something really hard, go hard at it. 2 to 3 months, it starts to taper off and then they kind of disappear and they don't do it anymore. And they hope that nobody notices. But here's a problem. We do notice because we see you go hard, extremely hard in doing something that's outside of your norm. And at first we're supporting you. We're like, hey, that's cool, man. And then after we kind of got over the buzz of seeing you do something new, we're like, oh, cool. We'll just see how it plays out because now we go into skepticism mode as an observer. And the thing is most people have to understand that people are watching them in silence until you earn their trust. And you earn their trust by consistently showing up and delivering value every single day over a period of time. So I'll tell you that even with the clients I work with, the sweet spot's between 6 to 12 months. If you can show up every single day, including weekends, don't be weak like that. Talk about weekdays and weekend days. It's all every day, 365 driven. Show up 6 months minimum. Commit to doing that. And you're going to start to see a turning point where people are finally starting to support you again, because now you've proven your consistency over time. Even if you felt like nobody was watching, you're still doing this stuff. People are going to start to show up because they go, man, this person is serious. They're actually committed, because most people would have quit 3 months ago, like the 80% of the losers out there that do that. But this person, here they are, they're showing up every day. They're delivering value. They stick up the same positive attitude. They're contributing things. They're trying to make an effort. They're improving. Watching them literally transform before my eyes. That's when I start liking your posts and responding to some of the things you're doing. And about 12 months in, they're talking even more and they're telling their friends about you and they're tagging you all over the internet. And that's what I noticed about 18 months in of doing these videos and creating podcasts and things like that, is that now I'm tagged like every single day, like 100 times a day, all over the internet. I don't know these people, and I don't see them following me on my personal feeds, but I know that they're listening. And I think that's awesome. I think that's, if you want to get your message out there and there's a purpose behind what you're doing, you got to just see it through. And I find that the consistency is what wins. And me knowing that 90% of the people are going to quit, I'm just going to have to outlast them. And if you understand that principle and that mathematics and that thing that keeps you showing up, you realize that if I can beat 90% of the people who are going to enter the same space just by outlasting them and outworking them, that's an easy win, because it removes the uncertainty, knowing they're going to quit anyways. If I can just last, I have a very good option and good chance to succeed on the backside of this. And that's what I've done for every business, every fitness journey, clients, everything is always about just that time period. You got to show up every day.
Absolutely, man. And it's small steps. There's 2 things that I want to touch on that. What you just said is just so great. The first thing is, I've heard this quote, this sentence repeated so many times, and every time I hear it, I kind of cringe a little bit, is I heard, it's better to burn out than rust out. Which, why are those the only 2 options?
I don't like either of those either.
I don't like that.
I think I would rather rust out if I was going to pick, because that means that you actually had a longer lifespan of useful use
right
before you rusted, which is age. We're all rusting essentially, right?
Yeah, I heard that a couple weeks ago, and I was like, why are those your only 2 options? And that's where you get into consistency, is those small little steps. Like, you just have to get 1% better. You're not burning out, and you're certainly not rusting out if you're continuing to move forward. So that I didn't like that, and so that answer where you're talking about those consistency, those small steps, is perfect. I love that. And the second thing that you talked about is purpose. And so you've mentioned that you want to turn your profit, turn your purpose into profit, which sounds great, but how do I discover my purpose? I don't know where to start, Tony. How do I find my purpose?
That's a tough question, and I think that it changes over time. Okay, yeah. I mean, I think each decade of your life, let's say your teens, your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, 50s, and so on, your purpose is going to shift a little bit each time. And you talked about earlier about having children. Even after having children, your purpose changes a little bit more. You start to take things a little bit more serious. You start to think about raising people that are observing you and being a good example of them. So I understand that the whole what's the meaning of life and what the purpose, those kind of questions are really hard to answer for everybody. And I don't think that anyone has the right answer for that. You have to discover that for yourself. So you're asking how to discover that. Well, for me, I discovered that in a car accident, actually. I raced cars. 2015, I was in a major accident when I was racing at a drag strip, and I hit a concrete wall at 130 miles per hour in a two-door sports car. And in that moment, approaching the wall, I literally said to myself, well, here I go, because I thought I was going to die on that impact. I mean, it was just bad odds of hitting a car that small, a concrete Jersey barrier at 130 miles per hour. And, you know, I survived and had no injuries. And I started thinking to myself, why am I still here? Because the entire car was demolished. The front of the car was caved in up to the windshield. Every panel was bashed in, and two wheels were actually literally off the car. And I was very calm. I've always been calm in these kind of situations and high stress situations. But the paramedic at the track, she, you know, inspected me and was asking me questions to see if I had a concussion and things like that. And I was answering very clearly. And she said at the end of the inspection, she goes, can I tell you something? And I thought, man, what is she going to tell me? Is there some injury that I don't know about? She's going to tell me now. And she just goes, you're remarkably calm for someone that's been in a major accident. People crash out here every night, and they're usually got the shakes from the adrenaline rush, and their heart rate's elevated. Everything about me, my vitals were completely calm. And I said, I am calm. And I didn't know why, okay, because I've never been in a major accident before like that. But what was going through my mind is, I should have died. I should have died. Why am I still here? Why am I still here? Okay. And then that led to the next series of thoughts. What if I would have died? And then that led to the next series of thoughts. What would people have thought about me had I died? Well, how would I be remembered? And I would challenge anybody that's watching this or listening to this to go through that mortality exercise. Just set aside some time. And this is what I tell people to do. If you really want to go through an emotional journey to see what your purpose is, write out your obituary. Write out what someone that you truly love, or maybe your best friend or a family member would read at your funeral if you were to die today, not tomorrow, not when you're 80, today. Just all stop, everything that you've achieved or not achieved in your life. If it came to a stop today, because no time is guaranteed, what would they say about you? And if you're very truthful about that, you're gonna tear up, and you're gonna start to think about the things that you thought you should have achieved if you were to pass away today. And you're going to think about all the regrets that you look back on for the things you didn't try versus the things that you tried and failed. And you're going to think about, am I really doing something, or am I really creating a real impact in this world, or am I just consuming and being a consumer in this world? And for me, the answer was, I would have been remembered as the nice guy with a bunch of cool cars, because all I had to do was go look back at people that had passed away, my friends in the racing scene, the motorcycle scene, passed away in the recent years. It happens quite often. How were they remembered? And it was always nice guy, had cool cars, gone too soon, hope they're racing upstairs with the big man, and to me, it's like, that's good, but is that enough? And the answer for me was glaringly obvious. That's not enough. Like, being a nice guy with cool cars, that's very superficial. And I just thought about, man, I need to do more with my life. So I actually left my oil and gas career back in 2015. It was a multiple six-figure salary income. And I said, I need to go bet on myself and do things that I actually believe in. And so I didn't know what the answers were. Again, I just said, it's not the oil industry. I'm tired of being in that industry. It's treated me rotten. It's cyclical, and I don't have a lot of control over things, even though they pay me enough to kind of show up and hang out. And so I said, okay, what do I want to do? So for the next 2 years, luckily I put myself in a financial situation to be able to afford that. I just worked from home, and I took contract jobs, and I wrote my book and just kind of did things and thought about what I want to do for the rest of my life. And for me, discovering purpose, it was, okay, that's the purpose for me, is it's centered around the word impact. Okay. And if I go, okay, I don't want to say what what is my purpose? I want to say, what is my impact? What can I do to impact this world and leave a positive, lasting legacy had I died, right? So you start thinking about, okay, now it's impact, not purpose. It's something I can actually think about. And most people think that they're too small to make some kind of impact, but that's not true at all. Everybody's got the same capabilities to make a big impact. You just have to find the time and the consistency to build that. And so I said, okay, there's two things I have a lot of passion for. They're cars and business. I was literally the little kid that would go to Kroger's with my mom and go to the magazine rack while she was shopping. And I would read Hot Rod magazine, and I would read Forbes magazine and entrepreneurship magazines. And I didn't understand business, but I was interested in it. And I was always trying to figure things out. And I didn't understand all the terminology, but I was trying to learn. And I figured that was a pathway to make some financial success, which led to happen. So I said, okay, cars and business. Well, everybody knows about my cars. Now I'm going to teach them how I had all those cars, right? So I'm going to teach people about this stuff because I've helped people in the last 15 years start businesses that became multimillionaires themselves. And they were always telling me that I should be teaching this stuff, but I didn't want to stand in front of a camera. Had a very comfortable life. I didn't like my recorded voice. I like taking photos, but I never liked being on the other side of the camera. And so the insecurities and the fears from the potential critics is what kept me from standing out in the light. And so I decided that point that my purpose, my impact is going to be more important than my fears. So that's when I started writing the book to help more people get that knowledge to be able to start and scale and exit their business. And I thought, well, now I need to become the right person to carry this message. So I invested in leadership and public speaking training with Toastmasters and I hired a speaking coach. And I did videos every single day for over a year just to get better, because I knew that if my message was as important as I thought, I needed to be doing everything that's possible within my capability to get that message out there. And so that's what I decided in 2017. I launched 365 Driven. I said, I'm going to build an entrepreneurship community and help people just find the belief and the good business fundamentals to be able to start their first business or scale the business that they're currently in, because I've had such good success at that. And I've applied large communities of hundreds of thousands of members that I've led. I'm going to build one for millions of entrepreneurs because I'm comfortable in that role with large groups under, in my brand. So I just combined the skills that I had, and the biggest impact I was going to help in this world was by helping millions of people with their business and their confidence. And that's why I started.
And so you mentioned a couple things there that I want to circle back on, one of which would be fear. You had mentioned that you're weighing your impact against your fears. And so I always say, and I wish I had made it up, but it's something I regurgitate, is that fear is a liar, right? Mm-hmm. Fear is the lies and the insecurities and the learned behavior that we tell ourselves that is just meant to give ourselves excuses and to hold us back. And so how did you deal with your fears? How when you're weighing that impact versus fear, how do you deal with fears? How do you deal with those self-talk of that negative highlight reel that people talk so much about?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that fears are definitely an emotion that are imaginary. Okay. I'm going to give you some advice from looking from the other side of that fence right now, but then I'm going to go back on the other side of the fence that maybe a lot of listeners are on, because I understand that perspective. It wasn't that long ago. Most people talk about the fear of failure. They want to talk about, like, I don't want to do this because I could fail. And it's not true. There's no such thing as fear of failure. Okay. The real fear is not the failure itself. It's the fear of what other people are going to say about your failure. It's the fear of what other critics are going to talk about you or think about you based on that failure. So let's say you get fired from your job. If anybody's listening or watching this, they may have lost their job from layoffs or got fired, or maybe the company closed and they're jobless and you feel like you're unemployed. I want you to think about going back to that emotional state for a moment and feeling what you felt in that moment. One, you were scared because you didn't know where your income was going to come. Two, you felt like a failure to society because you were jobless, right? And you maybe not even wanted to tell like your friends or your family that you're unemployed, and you're hoping that you would just find another job and then everybody would be like, oh, cool, congrats on the new job. But you didn't want to have to go through the unemployment side of things. So understanding that is like the fear of loss and what other people think is what keeps people from starting so many different things. And let's say that you're in a severe financial debt and you want to go start a company, you realize it's going to have to take you a lot of time and effort just to get back to zero on the debt scale. And that's a lot of work just to get to zero. Let's say if you're morbidly obese or you're completely out of shape, Maybe you were fit when you're young, but you've let yourself go. You're looking at the scale of where you're at versus where you'd like to be on the positive side. And you're realizing that it's going to take a lot of work just to get to zero, just to get to even. You're going to have to put in a lot of time and dedication and effort. And that's what keeps most people starting as well. And you got to understand that everybody has to do that. Everybody has to go through those struggles to be able to get successful. And, for me, the fear of criticism and all that, like, it's true. It happens. And here's the other side I'm going to teach you that, don't fear critics and haters and naysayers. I want you to encourage you to go find them. Okay. Because there's a lot of people that pride themselves in being likable and everybody likes me and I don't have any haters and critics. And I think that's a good thing. Okay. They pat themselves on the back and they feel all jolly about that, probably lying to themselves a little bit. But the truth is that until you do something actually worth noticing, you're not going to have any critics or haters. That's why you don't have any, is because you're not doing anything worth noticing. You're just existing. Okay. You're obscure. Nobody knows you. You're not making any kind of impact other than maybe for yourself, for selfish reasons. So the thing is, once you start to do things that people notice and you start to stand out in the spotlight a little bit more, guaranteed you will have critics and haters. I had some people that I knew for 15, 20 years that turned out to be haters and naysayers and critics because of their own insecurities, obviously, but they came out of the woodworks and they started just saying these little snarky things or passive aggressive statements and like, are you sure you want to do that? Like, I wouldn't do that. Like, are you crazy? Why would you leave that behind? And stuff like that. They're just trying to talk you off of that because they don't really care about you. What they're uncomfortable with is themselves. Okay. When you start to do things to improve your own life, when you're climbing, when you're doing things, whether it's fitness or business or starting something new that's outside your norm, initially they'll give you the golf clap like they support you, but then they'll talk about, negatively about you behind your back with the other friends who aren't doing anything. Because what happens is your light starts to get bigger and you start to glow brighter. It highlights all the darkness on them that they're not doing things because they know it's within their capabilities to do exactly what you're doing. And you're exemplifying it by showing proof of it. What it's doing is making them feel worse about themselves because they know that they're not doing it. So rather than being inspired by your actions and your transformation, they're going to throw rocks at you to try to keep you down at their level. And I've seen this at every financial system I can think of. Like, it doesn't just happen with poverty people or middle-class people. I've seen people that have net worth millions still act the same behaviors. So you got to understand these human behaviors, but you're going to have those critics. You're going to have those haters. Maybe in the people that you know the most will be those people, maybe of some family members as well. But you understand that in my group, we celebrate the haters because when you go get your haters, it means you actually are doing something finally worth noticing.
Yeah, man. Amen on that. So I want to circle back to, and I know that we're coming up on time here, and I told you I would have you out of here on time, and I will keep that. But I wanted to circle back to something you had mentioned earlier that plays on that, as you said, about creating goals and that timeline of a year. And so it's a long thought process that I didn't make up. That is, you're going to overestimate what you can do in a year and underestimate what you can do in 5 years. So when you're setting these goals of a year or 5 years or whatever, how do we set them and how big should they be?
Yeah, there's a lot of different schools of thoughts around goal setting. Sometimes people will tell you to set achievable goals. And then some people are like, set unachievable goals. Otherwise, you can come up short and still be way ahead. I get there's different schools of thought, but I think that a lot of my success comes through the project management I had for offshore industry. Okay, I was managing $100 to $500 million type contracts and a lot of moving parts, international, 75 to 100 people, got companies in the United States and in France and England and Africa. And I was managing all these different things, a lot of moving parts, high risk. When we got on the installation phase, we're burning $2 million a day. So you got to make sure everything's right. And so I've learned that a project is something that's defined as it has a deliverable and it has a date of that deliverable, and you have a level of quality and expectations for that deliverable, whatever that project may be. Well, if you apply those same principles to your business or whatever you're building, your podcast, your book, it needs to have a date. It needs to have a due date, a level of quality and expectations, and it needs to have a list of everything that you would like to have identified. So once you identify that and you look at the time that you have remaining to do that, is there a logical order of steps that you have to do in a certain amount of time each to achieve that goal? And the answer is yes. Okay. So if you don't have enough time, there's ways to solve that. You can either add more resources, which is meaning farm some work out or spend more money, or you just have to be realistic and do some more stuff yourself or work longer hours. There's a lot of ways to get to the right answer, or you just give yourself a little bit more time, but there needs to be a firm date there. Okay. So I don't believe in setting unachievable goals, because as a project manager for 20 something years, I want achievable projects.
Yeah.
So I put things on a realistic timeline and I block out that time. And that's the other thing most people don't live with is a calendar. Vast majority of the population, we talked about it earlier, about they just go to the 8 to 5 job and that's their calendar for the day. And they don't think about anything else. But the successful people, everyone that I've ever met that become millionaires, they live on a schedule every single day. I have a schedule every single day. I just use my Gmail app. It's a free calendar app attached to my email address. And I fill in slots for the podcast and time that I'm writing for the next book, and then the creative zone. So the fitness, everything that's important to you needs to be on a calendar every single day, so you know what to do within that time frame in the day. And even social time, people think about, like, I want to spend more time with family and friends. Like, if that's important to you, put it on your calendar. Hey, Thursday night at 7 to 9, I'm going to go dinner with this person. So guard that time. Once it's on your thing, you start to learn some discipline. And you're also going to start to find out where you're wasting an incredible amount of time. And you're going to be able to make excuses and hold yourself accountable, because, like, dude, I didn't get this done, but look, I sat on the couch and binged watched Netflix for 3 hours the other day. So that's why I'm behind 3 hours. So until you start to measure things and keep yourself accountable on a calendar every single day, even weekends, then you're never going to be able to figure out why you're not achieving things. So always measurable. And we try to set 90-day goals, and we just monitor those 90 days at a time, leading up to maybe a 1-year goal.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, I break goals down big time. And like we mentioned in the beginning of the show, I come from the engineering world as well. So that reverse engineering of goals was something that I took from my professional world and started implementing them into my personal life to say, okay, I want to buy a house. Okay, I want to do this. Okay, I want to pay off my debt. And reverse engineering it down to what daily step can I take? What 2-week measurable can I put in place? So all good stuff, man. And I love the engineer mind. I love that. It's so cool. And it's so cool to see you can take things from the engineering world and take it out of that, those verbiage that scares a lot of people, and put it into everyday talk and take real action. I love it. And so with that, how can people find Tony Watley, and how can people get in touch with you?
My website is 365driven.com. And from there, you'll find links to all my social media and my best-selling book and my podcast, which is called 365 Driven. Also have an entrepreneurship community called The Society, and you'll find all that information there, 365driven.com.
Good stuff. Guys, go check him out. Like I said, a lot of what you see here at Inovare is driven from that man right there. Tony, thank you so much for coming on, man. I really, really appreciate it.
Hey, Roy, thanks for having me on, buddy.
Guys, if you want to listen to this, you can go to iTunes. You can go to Spotify. You can go to InovarePodcast.com. You'll listen to this episode and all episodes previous, and you can also watch us. We're on YouTube, says my marketing team. That's pretty cool, I guess. So if you enjoy watching things, you can go to YouTube, check us out, watch all of our episodes. And in this episode and all episodes air live every Friday at 4 p.m. So you can check them out, ask them questions, do whatever it is that you want to do. Join our Inovare Mindset group on Facebook. You can find all the details on how to join at InovarePodcast.com. And until next time, guys, see you.